And thanks to all y'all who are have stuck around, watching us wander around and not do any. Well, me, I guess, not do anything productive. Can't be very amusing.
Wheels pre-show coverage of the 2018 IPCPR Convention and Trade Show is sponsored by Drew Estate, the rebirth of cigars.
All right, so we're back. We are now going to start the process all over again. We are apparently being able to be heard from all of y'all. And Charlie is dealing with another small thing, and he's going to come back, and then we'll start the whole thing. So again, we appreciate y'all. We appreciate y'all sticking around. As somebody mentioned on the comments, it is always challenging to have a live broadcast, especially when you're trying to do it over so many different platforms. We did the same thing that we've done the last 3 days, and Facebook apparently just did not decide to cooperate.
Hello.
And here we are again.
It wasn't identical to the same thing that we've done the last 3 days, though. Yeah, I don't think anyone heard that, Brooks. Oh, that camera went out. Great.
No, I think they heard it. I just.
Keep going, Brooks.
Well, the gremlins keep eating the wires. Apparently. Was that a battery issue?
Don't know.
So we will continue to try to fix things. We can do it with just 2 cameras pretty easily, but we'd prefer not to. So we will we'll change the batteries on that and see if that changes the outcome. Charlie said I should continue to fill up space. So Pete just joined. That's a nice surprise. He hasn't seen the complete cluster that we've had so far, so thanks for joining us, Pete. We appreciate all of you. And we're back.
Great.
Here we go.
Yeah, so thanks if you're on YouTube, thanks for watching this again. We're going to power through this intro. So that means we're not going to have Brooks explain the prize from Drew Estate. It's not this skateboard. This is the prop that we've been using. Brooks, do you want to move that out of the way?
I shall.
Thanks. So this is a skateboard from last year's IPCPR Convention and Trade Show, hence why it says IPCPR 2017 on there. This comes from Drew Estate. Every year in their booth, they have some sort of item, or items, I guess, but it's always themed, and they're always decorated in Drew Estate garb. So this is obviously a Liga Privada-esque skateboard. and they are custom hand painted at Subculture Studios, which is the art studio located next door to the factory. If you ever go on Cigar Safari, you will see Subculture. Every year it's a different item. So last year was skateboards. They've done hard hats, water towers, a whole mess of shoes, chivetas, tobacco leaves, tobacco molds, everything, or not everything, but they've done a lot of different things. I don't know what it is this year. They will not tell us. One of these years they're going to do umbrellas. I don't know if it'll be this year. But anyway, so they have an item. They've given us 5 of these items to give away, but they're not going to tell us what they are. So if you leave a comment, we will select a comment at random, and that comment will entitle you to win one. 4 people have already won a skateboard, or not a skateboard, a prize. This is the last time we're giving away. It won't be skateboards unless
it won't be my skateboard.
They're doing skateboards this year. If you do win, like we've said before, it's probably not going to be till August until you get your prize. But we'll take your information down, and then you can pay attention to our IPCPR coverage or Drew Estate's Facebook, social media, and you can see what the prize or what the item they're giving away. These items are normally given away to retailers that show up and place orders at the booths, but we're going to give some away to some people that aren't having to place $10,000 orders. So there's that. In addition to that, Drew Estate's also got a separate contest. If you go to drewestate.com/IPCPR, they're giving away, I believe, 10 prize packs. I don't know if they're the same, if they include the same items. I don't know if they're more or less or different, but you can go there and sign up and play your odds there. You also could like win our contest and their contest. There's something that says that you can't do that. So that's the housekeeping item for that. Hopefully this is still working. My computer was also dying because we are in the halfwheel office. A whole bunch of our office has been shipped. Keep going, Brooks. Just hit continue broadcast. A whole bunch of our office has been shipped to Las Vegas for us to do this there. So we're missing some things, and it's causing problems, including apparently some potential buffering issues. Do you want to talk, Brooks?
Yes.
About the beer?
Yes, the beer. So, quickly, beer we're drinking is vanilla truffle. Not sure that's actually going to work out because of the white, but it is a collaboration between Trillium in Massachusetts and J. Wakefield in Miami.
You can, all right. You can see it, so it's not still on the Drew Estate slide.
Miami. No, it's not still on the Drew Estate slide. In Miami, they've done collaborated a few times before. Affogato was one, as well as macaroon and tiramisu. All of them taste basically what you would think, considering the names. I have not had this one yet, and was looking forward to it. Now it's warm, and I don't want to drink it, but we're going to anyway. We're going to power through.
Isn't it a stout? It's not that warm.
I'm just kidding.
How many people died in line trying to get this beer?
Cheers. Many Gungans were killed. Well, that's vanilla. Dark chocolate, vanilla. Sweet, but not too sweet. I actually don't think it's all that sweet at all. Quite good. The carbonation's a little low on it, but.
So you can still see the video, right?
I can.
All right. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to, unfortunately, we also have other things to do today. And so I can't troubleshoot every single problem. I understand if you're having issues with this. The good news is it is going on YouTube, and it appears there's not issues on YouTube. So at the very least, you can watch there, or you can potentially watch it on our site later. Patrick says there's issues with the video. Brooks has got his phone up, and there does not appear to be issues at all. But I understand that Patrick's not alone. The issue is I don't know why Patrick's having issues and Brooks isn't. So. And I don't know why, like, one of you is having issues and other people aren't. So we're going to get through this video because the other part of this is that, like, I'm not sure I can fix that problem. And we've got other articles to write about. There's, like, 26 more new Lotus products coming out. So,
Gabby, your comment, you guys are such an asset to our industry. Thank you for all your hard work. I appreciate that. I actually read that as ass hat first. But I appreciate the comment. All right. So let's get started, shall we? We're going to start down.
Have we explain what we're doing today?
Comments.
I forget.
Let's explain again quickly.
People stood in line for this?
People stood in line, yes. So what we're going to do is we're going to answer some comments that have been put on the Facebook side about page about any page really about IPCPR show. Any questions that you have about the show itself or ourselves or anything in general, but trying to keep it about the IPCPR show. You can still. Sorry, Mitch.
I don't think that the like. Yeah, I don't know. Here's the thing: you put like a company that no one's ever heard of, and we see it every year, and they get a booth and they put some video screens up, and the booth's still empty. And then you take a company, you know, like I'm trying to. I mean, Romacraft's booth's gotten a lot better, but Romacraft could go in with 2 tables and a 10 by 10, and the booth would still have way too many people in it. So I don't think that there's that much of a difference in terms of spending money on booths. I think that there's people that certainly spend money, and I think Romacraft was in that place. I certainly know that Pete Johnson, who tuned in earlier, like he designed his booth, which looks a lot better than how it used to. But one of the main reasons why I did it was so that it was easier for his reps and him to do business, not just in terms of like writing orders, but also so that if they were showing people around the booth, they weren't having to trip over each other and things like that. And so there are some people that design their booths to be, certainly very functional, and in the process they look pretty, like say the Titan Wahoo booth. Then there are other people like say CLE, Christian Monroe is notorious for making sure that his booth is always smaller than it should be. That way, even if it's only half full, it looks like it's super busy. As someone that's been in the CLE booth, and Brian Burt, who covers it, I think for maybe the 4th or 5th year, he'll tell you it's a pain because you are stepping over people at every turn. But the booth always looks busy. It looks super busy because of just the way that people perceive it. And by the same token, the Davidoff booth or the General booth, even sometimes the Drew Estate booth they don't seem always like they're super busy, but they'll have more people in it than every other booth in the trade show. So I don't think that the retailers care too much really about how flashy people's booths are. I think that, and certainly in terms of attracting business, I don't think it matters much at all. I mean, I do know that like if you get a celebrity in your booth, like we've seen David Ortiz, Karl Malone appears like he's going to be at the trade show this year. Ray Lewis and Gary Sheffield with Rocky Patel, Arturo Sandoval with Arturo Fuente. Like those people certainly will attract more people to your booth. I think a lot more so than the Perdomo video wall last year, or the video board type thing. But I'm not sure those people are necessarily helpful for like writing orders with retailers, because then all the retailer wants to do is like take a picture with fill in the blank. So that's my thought. I don't think it matters much.
Yeah, one quick thing. I really love the idea of making these booths personal to people's business and personal to people's personalities. Somebody like Island Jim, for example, his booth was very unique.
What?
And very obviously his. I love the idea behind that. I don't think, as long as you have a minimum booth, I think that you're fine, and it won't necessarily impact the amount of money that you make. I think it's more about the cigars, personally.
The UPS guy just walked in. He's got to be confused as shit.
He has nobody to sign the packages. Thank you. All right. Here we go. Second question. Jerome Berry. Why is the IPCPR important for the brick and mortar customers?
That's a good question.
Good question, Jerome.
Should I not say I don't know?
You can if you'd like.
Look, the IPCPR.
I'll just make up something.
Oh, great. The IPCPR is really important for, I think, the entire cigar industry. Nothing else. It puts everyone under one roof, and so it's a big networking event. It's a time, certainly I think you can attest to this. For me, even, I travel quite a bit for cigar events and other things, but there's a lot of people you only see at the IPCPR trade show. And so on that level, it's important. For brick and mortar retailers, I think it's also uniquely, the trade show is designed for them, but I think it's uniquely important because you can see new products. You can see products that maybe you brought in before that you haven't reordered or for whatever reason maybe forgot about. You'll hear customers walk in and be like, oh man, if like Brooks walks into your shop, will be like, you really need to bring in Crux. And you're like, all right, there's like one guy that wants to bring in Crux. And then you hear him again and you're like, all right, but Crux isn't even on the market yet. Brooks is 2015. Like, why do you keep asking for these cigars I can't buy? And so you have those customers that do that. And certainly Crux is now in a different place because they've been around for a few years. But you have customers that walk in with some random brand that you've never heard of. And so that's your opportunity to go see them at the show and figure out what they're about and meet the people and try the cigars and figure out whether or not, that's something you want to bring in. I think one thing that gets lost in the shuffle about the IPCPR trade show, particularly when you hear people complaining about it and how it may not be worthwhile anymore to go, because it used to be really about discounts and placing new orders for new product, which certainly can be done over the phone or via the internet. I think one thing that takes place is that it also gives a lot of these shops the opportunity to talk to their reps' bosses, and to also talk to the owners of the companies and things like that, which they may otherwise, particularly if you're not like a super big shop or you're not in a huge market, you may not get that opportunity. And it's not like, oh, I'm gonna need to go complain about my rep, but I also think it gives you the opportunity to see like, are there things that like this particular company is doing that your rep for whatever reason isn't mentioning? Like your rep may just not like this particular line, and so he may not mention it very often, but that might be a line that, is actually something that might work for your shop, and they might have, ashtrays and hats or whatever to go along with it, or some sort of sales promotion. And so the trade show, because it's face-to-face, as with most things in life, when you sit down at a table with someone, I think that there's a lot of things that can happen that may not be able to happen over the internet. And plus, you don't have to worry about what happens if they can't hear you on Facebook. True
that. There's nothing like being able to talk to somebody face to face, and networking in this situation is an invaluable tool. So I think it is invaluable. There are certain disadvantages as well, but it certainly is something that I think that people will continue to take advantage of.
Like stomach flu disadvantage.
Well, for some people, perhaps. All right, Corey Woodard. Sorry. Why do you think the IPCPR is so against consumers coming to certain events, especially if it will generate additional revenue?
Because the revenue that it would generate is not worth it. So if you're talking about why the IPCPR as an organization is not fond of having consumers show up at their trade show, it's because it just isn't. The amount of money that the IPCPR can generate selling booth spaces and sponsorships and things like that, you would have to have a lot of consumers show. It's just not one of those things where when you look at their business model and how it sort of works out, the IPCPR cares about how many people show up. I don't want you to get the impression that they don't, but for them, it's not so much like when we pay as media members, when we pay the $150 or $200 per person, whatever it is, to basically go to the trade show, like that is a revenue source for the IPCPR, but it's not really a terribly profitable one, particularly on a per ticket basis. What's really profitable for them is people buying booth space and buying sponsorships and things like that. And so I don't think that there's really a great number in terms of, is it 500 consumers, 1,000 consumers, 10,000 consumers, where from a logistics standpoint, the IPCPR is really capable of handling that group of people and making sure that they would adhere to all the rules, and also to the point where they could make profitability. Because if they let in 1,000 consumers, they would have to hire a ton more security people and other things. That's the IPCPR as an organization. And like why they won't let you into like the General Cigar Party and things like that is because it's not a consumer event. I mean, they're really trying to market this as a business to business event, and a place where you can go and do business and involve your business. And I think that retailers in particular would not be particularly thrilled about seeing consumers show up, even to something like the kickoff party. As for why, I think the real reason is because I don't think any of the manufacturers really want consumers there. I mean, they may say that, but what good does it do if your General Cigar Company and consumers show up to the trade show, even on day? And I don't think that would be something that anyone would necessarily look forward to. The other part of this that I'll say is that, yes, this is a special event and there's really nothing else like this, but there are plenty of great consumer cigar events around the country. And I'd argue that the best consumer event in the U.S. actually is right around the corner, and that's Rocky Mountain Cigar Festival in Colorado, which takes place every August. And those events are designed for consumers. These are not. And I mean, you've been enough. Could you imagine a consumer walking in? Because the first show that you went to, you had been in the cigar industry for a couple of years.
So many years ago, yes.
But you had not been to the show, obviously. You also had not really, for the amount of time that your blog had been around, you really had a couple companies that you were pretty close with, and then everyone else basically, you didn't know anyone at Ashton.
No, I did not at the time.
And there was a laundry list of companies, and it wasn't just Ashton, where if you walked into their booth, you would have no clue who to go to.
True enough.
And so, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but this has been tossed around a couple of times where somebody will come out and say, yeah, maybe we should make one day of them for consumers and things like that, and it never goes anywhere, and there's a reason for that. This is a selling show, and that's basically what it is. It'd be like going to Big Smoke and retailers having a day at Big Smoke to sell cigars.
But I think even that would make more sense than this. I mean,
it's a selling show.
But I guess my other point to you, Brooks, is that it's not designed to be for consumers, and I think that it would be very tough for most consumers, even people that are in cigar shops all the time, to go to this event, because even if there was just a consumer day, and so there was no media, there was no retailers allowed. Like if it was just a consumer day, it's not really designed for consumers. So like, yeah, you know who Pete is or Rocky Patel, and you can walk right up to them and like, interrupt that conversation. But you went to your first show, and like, I took you around much as other people had taken me around to some booths to introduce you to some people because it's not like it's not set up for that. It's not like, oh, go stand in line and we'll go take your picture with Rocky. Like, Rocky's just walking around saying hi to customers. And so I think that, I think consumers would struggle quite a bit with a lot of, how to get around and how to say hi to people. And the other part is like at Big Smoke, I've never been, but from the pictures I see, it appears to be they're basically setting up tables like this with maybe, nicer tablecloths and some backgrounds and things like that. They're not spending the kind of money that Davidoff in general and Altadas and Drew Estate are spending on these booths, or any other company for that matter. And so, yes, like they've already set them up, but from a cost perspective, you can't justify having, that Perdomo board rented for another day just so consumers can show up. It's very, very expensive, and it really is designed as a marketing event for retailers.
Yeah, if you want to do something like that, I second Charlie 100%. Go to Rocky Mountain Cigar Festival. It's awesome. And there's a possibility that Charlie will be making mojitos.
I will not be making mojitos at Rocky Mountain Cigar Festival.
All right, number 3. David Williams, will you be doing live reviews of the new edition cigars of each manufacturer during interviews with them?
No.
Yes, the answer is no. We don't do reviews on the floor. It's the samples are not typically not in optimal conditions. We can make very generalized ideas, but we don't ever make a review of any sort.
All right. From what I understand, sorry, not to interrupt that, but there are still some issues. Once again, like I wish I could figure out what they are. Brooks does not appear to be having any issues. So my recommendation is if you are having issues, go to YouTube, watch it there. The quality will be better anyway than even the best Facebook quality. If you are not having issues on Facebook, then good for you. Stick on Facebook.
Yes. All right, number 4.
That was directed at my dad, who's having issues.
Mitch Smith, with California's taxes, we saw a decrease in California retailers at the show last year. Do you anticipate the same this year, or is I suspect we're going to see less California retailers than there were in 2016, but probably more than there were last year. But once again, attendance really isn't the question. It's how much are they buying. There could be 1,000 California retailers that show up, but if they place an order that's equivalent to the same as 20 California retailers, it doesn't matter that there was 1,000 of them there. Yep. Pretty much exactly what I would have said.
Did you pay attention to that at all?
I skimmed it.
Okay.
Drew Maddox. Maddox. Which company has been flying under the radar is poised to have a breakout year?
Half-wheel.
True enough.
I don't know.
They fly under the radar?
Yeah, I don't. I'm trying to think of companies that I would list as flying under the radar.
Drew, that's very impressive that you got a question that stumped Charlie.
I mean, I mentioned Bespoke the other day. I guess that would be the one that would come to mind. I certainly would consider them to be flying under the radar. You haven't had any of their product yet, still.
I have not.
Yeah. I think JRE might be another one if they're still flying under the radar. I just think that we haven't seen that many new companies.
Not that many new companies coming out, really. So it's just not. It's hard for something to.
And even companies that even companies that could be that Bespoke's not new, for example. They've been out for a few years, but there's not a ton of companies that are small that I get a sense of like they're really having a ton of momentum heading into the show. It's not like previous year. I mean, I remember distinctly, I don't know if you were at the trade show that year, but like the Curavari year where it was like everyone's going to go check out Curavari, that was easy. Like, because it was like multiple retailers around the country. It also helped that was a company where they didn't have a working phone number or email address, so like you could only see them at the trade show. That might be a good thing for number 1. If you have to talk to Curavari, IPCPR trade show is a really important thing because you otherwise cannot do so throughout the year.
Yeah. Nice people, but
no working email address. Were you there? Because one year they gave out business cards at the show, and they had like glued over a different email address versus the one that was on the card, and the one that they glued on top was actually a fake one, so people wouldn't contact them. The one on the bottom was the one that they had been using beforehand. It's great.
I don't know what to say to that. All right. So Greg says, Charlie, I'm a little confused by these new releases, and maybe you can help clear it up. I believe the original Liga Aniversario.
So this was a question that was left on our post about the Liga Aniversario and the H99, which are two new Liga Privadas that are coming out.
Released prior to August 2016 deadline, has a sun-grown Habano wrapper. A recent video from JD even mentioned a yet-to-be-released Liga Aniversario with a Sumatra seed, Ecuadorian-grown wrapper. Whereas these announced were Connecticut Criollo and Connecticut Corojo wrappers. This is a new Aniversario release, different than the original pre-August 2016 Aniversario release. Maybe I have things confused. Well, the answer is yes, they're different.
That is correct, although you're supposed to be asking the questions, not answering them.
Yes, my bad.
And if we continue with you answering them, I bet we're going to have some issues. Look, I'll say this. I mentioned on there that I don't think they're the same two blends. I do not know anything specifically about those cigars that were released prior to August 8th of 2016. That is a legitimate, do not know, didn't ask for them. I certainly understood what they were doing. I will say this. I know many manufacturers, and this is, once again, do not know what Drew Estate released in terms of the Liga Aniversario, but many other manufacturers, not named Drew Estate, certainly shipped cigars prior to August of 2016 with different bands and in different boxes, but not the same blends. That's just the reality of it. Is that something that would be considered a violation in the eyes of FTA? Probably. Is that something that FTA has zero way of tracking the sort of hoopla that took place around August of 2016? I've always said that my theory was that FDA was really not going to worry about what happened right around August of 2016. They were really going to wait until the substantial equivalence deadlines go into effect, which have now been delayed till 2021. And then after that, they're going to start enforcing it, because then it'll be pretty easy to figure out, like, okay, this manufacturer was doing X, now they're doing Y. They haven't told us they've changed. They haven't given us an explanation about why they've changed. So here we go. Let's go after them. But and the other probability here with Drew Estate, because I do know that they released thousands of new SKUs into the market, is that they probably released like 65 versions of Liga Privada, prior to August of 2016. It just happened to be that a couple of them got picked out. We have some of the stuff here. There's like Undercrown barrel aged or something somewhere in this humidor. I think it's right there. But like they.
I'd like to smoke that.
Yeah, but like who knows what that is? Like that could be. It's. Chances are it's probably not that different than anything else we've smoked.
Probably.
But it could be Cuba Cuba for all we know. Like. That's just packaging as far as I'm concerned. And so, like I'm sure that there's like Liga Privada Candela was on an invoice somewhere, and Liga Privada Barberpool, and I don't know any of that stuff, but I'm pretty sure that Drew Estate covered their butts in terms of making sure that they had plenty of Liga options going forward. So, as to answer your question, I don't think that they're the same cigars, and it's gonna be on FDA to try to prove it if they really want to get to that point, which I suspect that FDA really probably doesn't care too much.
Bill Rigoni, will you be attending the premiere of Hand Rolled?
So we were given an option. The option was we could either go to see Hand Rolled, which I've gotten to be around the guys for the last couple of years as they've been shooting it, and I've seen the trailer. It looks like it's going to be very interesting, and I've heard some people that have seen the movie, and they've said that it's worthwhile watching. Or we could sit in a small conference room, and we could go through a 68-page manual that was produced about how to cover the trade show. And we all took a vote, and we voted unanimously that we were going to sit at the trade show and have more fun by reviewing a 68-page manual about how to write an article. So we will not be doing it. We have to do some training. I don't know what you want to call it, but we have a whole guide about trying to help our trade show coverage out. So we're going to do the Friday Facebook Live thing, hopefully on Facebook with audio, and then we're going to have some lunch. And unfortunately, we will miss the premiere. Hopefully, we can go see a copy or get a copy or see a show at some point. I really want to see the movie, and I've not seen it yet. But unfortunately, we have some business that we have to take care of.
You know, it's funny because I remember that vote going very differently.
You were drunk.
I have met the guys from Hand Rolled that are doing, or some of them, and they seem like very nice people. I have heard that it is a very interesting movie, and as you said, well worth watching. So we will be watching.
I want to give some context. Like the people that say it'll close, and then
Yeah, he's talking about parties and stuff.
Yeah, no, I certainly we don't go to as many as we used to in the past, just because I don't know, it's tougher. It's I went back and looked at our IPCPR 2012 coverage, and I think we covered like 26 booths or something, and now we're covering 130 something, if not more. So it's a little bit more work than what we've been used to. We're gonna go to a couple of the events. I don't. I think we'll show up probably at the Davidoff Cocktail Hour. Excuse me. And it sounds like the Drew Estate Media Party. It's not because certainly Davidoff Drew Estate bold advertised on this website, but the primary reasons for showing up to those two parties is that they're like both sort of convenient. One is very like earlier, it's a cocktail hour, and the other one's like, I don't know, like 10 o'clock till 2 a.m. or something, so it's much later. So we can have dinner in between. But no, I mean, we don't. I'm sure that some of us will probably stop by the Rumcraft Hospitality Suite at some point. Last year we went to the Ahio Hospitality Suite. We went to the Mombacho Cigars SA party. Anything else did we go to last year?
Not together.
Yeah.
So there we sometimes go apart as well. So we don't always go together as a group, just depending on how much time we have and what we're doing. So. But yeah,
look, I'd like to go to all of them, to be quite honest with you. I mean, it's certainly a lot more fun than some of the reasons why we don't go places is because we have to be working, like such as the Hand Roll movie. And yeah, I'd much rather go and drink and smoke cigars than work. But unfortunately, we've made this commitment to making the trade show as painful as possible for the four of us to cover. So we don't do that. But no, it's not like prior years. Like Alec Bradley used to have that big party at the Palms, and Davidoff used to have a big dinner, and there are still people that have dinners, but nothing quite on the grand scale, and certainly, many years ago with the CAO parties and things like that. So I would say if you're welcome to, or if you're in Vegas and you have invites, I would say go to them. They're a lot of fun, and even ones that you don't necessarily think are going to be like fun, usually end up being quite enjoyable. Brooks.
Yeah, 100% agree.
What's your favorite event that you've gone to at the trade show after hours? At that point, we were gonna start showing up on time or early to things, and clearly showed up well before they were ready. That one was cool, and then the Davidoff dinner they did that year, which I believe was Escurio. Was that the launch? That was the one where they had, because they had it's confusing because you get confused with what they did. It was the Escurio launch because they had a whole bunch of the same stuff they'd done in Miami for the Escurio launch.
Right, because we went to the Escurio launch
also
in Miami
came
too.
to New Orleans, but they had the guy that was painting the picture upside down.
Right.
Yeah, so that party was cool, as well as the one in Miami, quite frankly. But those two are the ones that that really stand out. Oh, there's another one, but it was pre-halfwheel.
Pre-halfwheel?
Yeah.
Is there such a thing?
Mm-hmm.
And that was?
That was, I refer to it as the Johnny Blue and Diet Night. So way back when, Drew Estate actually, it's hard to imagine this for, I think, readers and bloggers that weren't around for that point. But Drew Estate used to not be, the most involved media company with media, particularly with blogs. So they had that blogger party at the MGM. And it was your first show, because you were there for it. And we went and had noodles downstairs and then went up to the party. I refer to it as the Johnny Blue and Diet Night because we had, there was a whole Eventbrite process, and somebody had their Eventbrite account linked up to their Twitter account. And so when they, created the event, it got put on, the Cigar Safari Twitter account. So these two women had found it and, signed up for the event. The event was free, but Drew Estate just wanted to have a track record of, who was actually going to show up. And so these two women showed up to the party. At one point I turned around, and one of them was asking, I think, Steve Saka about, some Johnny Walker Blue, about, whether or not it was good and all. And Steve was like, yeah, Steve's a pretty big fan of Scotch, and or certainly knows his Scotches. And he was like, it's a blended Scotch, but, it's Johnny Blue. It's a staple for a lot of people. And, certainly, not the cheapest Scotch in the world. And so this woman fills up a tall glass with ice and puts some Johnny Blue and then some Diet Coke on top of it. And the look on Steve Saka's face was great. Those two people weren't bloggers. They literally they drove from California.
Just walked in.
No, they drove from California, and they came down, and I think when Johnny Brook opened the door and was like, "Oh yeah, they're from." These two people drove from California. He was like, "All right, like they drove from California. Like we're not gonna tell them to turn around and go back."
Was that the one that was in that room that had the you could go upstairs and had the
in the MGM, the hospitality suite.
Wow, it was a long time ago.
It was pre-halfwheel.
Ugh.
All right, we should keep going.
To answer your question for me specifically was the I love Davidoff's thing every year when they do it. Are they doing it this year?
No, they're doing that cocktail hour thing.
And I love Roma Craft. They always put on a good show. Good stuff. Careful.
That was fun.
All right, so a couple more. The Spencer Workman. Does the IPCPR benefit consumers who buy online more than the smaller shops who may not even be able to afford to visit the expo and have to depend on reps for new cigar info?
So IPCPR benefit. What's the first part? Online.
Consumers who buy online more than the smaller shops who may not even be able to afford. I'm not sure that actually makes sense. IPCPR is not a consumer show, so it wouldn't do anything for consumers at all. Perhaps you were thinking it benefits retailers who attend the show.
No. Who buy online more than they buy at smaller shops, who may not be able to afford to visit the expo and have to depend on. I don't know. Look, if you show up, I mean, look, let me put it this way: the IPCPR benefits the shops that show up more than the shops that don't.
Although quite a number of the deals are available even if you don't attend the show. It has been that way for continuing for a little while now, but not all of them. And there are exclusive cigars as well that are only available to people who show up at the show.
Yes.
In your guys' opinion, what is so special about Medio Tiempo leaf?
Marketing. Medio Tiempo is what?
Medio Tiempo.
Medio Tiempo.
Tiempo.
No, look, so Medio Tiempo tobacco, as far as I'm not a tobacco grower. I should preface this with that. But Medio Tiempo was a tobacco that, some people knew about, but really most people didn't know about until, I guess this would have been 2010, was the Behique.
Behique. Mm-hmm.
And so for Cohiba's 45th anniversary, 40th.
I think it's the
40th anniversary, they come out with, no, it can't be 2010 because the 50th.
2006?
Yeah, 2008? No, 2011. It was the 45th. Because the 40th was the original Behique, the $3,000 one.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 45th.
Good cigar, by the way.
Yeah. The 45th. Subtle. The 45th was the BHK, which is the second Behique, but the one that everyone knows. So it's three sizes, the 52, the 54, and the 56. And the claim was they use Medio Tiempo tobacco. So Medio Tiempo, excuse me, draw a little diagram.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, no, it's easier this way. So
I think we should frame this after he's done.
all right. It's probably more leaves than is necessary. So when you look at a tobacco plant, it kind of looks something, maybe, I don't know. I need someone
Maybe tilt it a little bit so that
No.
the light doesn't. There you go.
All right, so it kind of looks like this. And so it's divided up. So the leaves are bigger at the bottom, and then as they go up the plant, they get smaller and smaller. And at the top of the plant, there would typically be a flower, but it gets cut off because they want all the nutrients to go to the tobacco leaves. So typically, not always, what you do is you let the plant grow, you cut the flower off at the top, and then you also will then start picking the tobacco plant from the bottom to the top. The very bottom leaves are what's known as velado. There's a lot of different names here, but we're going to go with kind of the most used ones. So the bottom ones would be known as velado. And you see them occasionally used in cigars, but generally they aren't. They're very light in terms of flavor and strength. They're bigger leaves if they're allowed to grow, but a lot of times they get cut. And the reason why we don't use them a lot of times is because they get damaged because they're close to the ground, they're close to people's feet. And so some people cut them off early on in the process. Some people let them grow out. Whatever the case is, you don't see a lot of it in cigars. So then you move up on the plant, and you get into the Viso and the Sego and the Ligero. So the Ligero is all the way at the top of the plant, and it typically, if you had to compare it to the rest of the plant, it would be the stronger leaves in terms of their strength. It's not always the case, and certainly a Ligero from one plant might be a lot less strong than a Viso from another plant. But that's generally the way it works. So Medio Tiempo is a leaf priming that exists. Yep. You should hit
That
continue.
seems like a
Yeah, no. So anyway,
very specific.
prior to the BHK, at the very least, it wasn't being talked about very much, the Medio Tiempo concept. People would basically just take those leaves and they would put them in a pile with Ligero leaves and they would treat them like Ligeros, and that would be the end of it. And then along came the BHK, which got Cigar of the Year from Cigar Aficionado, and I think was pretty much universally regarded, at least in its first couple of years, as being a fantastic cigar. I certainly liked it. I know you liked it quite a bit.
Indeed.
I thought it was a very good cigar. And obviously, it got a lot of praise because it was a flagship Cohiba release for, at the time, a lot of money. It's still a lot of money, but now not as much as it seemed. And so, excuse me, we've seen other companies use them. I think Warped is probably the most notable example of Medio Tiempo branding. But I'll say this. It's not like Cas Fernandez or Aganorsa is the only one that has Medio Tiempo. It's just a matter of they're the only one that's like processing. It's been going on for many years, but people have just decided that it isn't like that important. I think the same could be said of like, it'd be interesting to see someone brand something like right below a Ligero and be like, it's a strong mid tobacco, and like run with that whole like bonanza.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I am even less.
Yeah,
you frame that. Yeah, I'm gonna take that. It's interesting to me, and I'm even less of a grower than you are, Charlie. But it's interesting to me that
you have those FSG seeds.
there are people.
Jeff Borshwitz, if you're watching this, please ask Brooks. I gave Brooks the FSG seeds that you sent. Brooks said he was going to plant them.
My son is fascinated with seeds, and we will be planting them in my herb garden.
With seeds and stems.
So I was going to do. Thank you for ruining my Instagram post. But anyway, I always find it interesting that people say, "Oh yeah, I can taste the Medio Tiempo."
Medio Tiempo.
Yeah, leaf in this blend. It's just basically a
It's a special Ligero.
It's not something like a different like a jalapa or something that you can taste specifically.
Well, I mean, I think you probably could taste it, but like
there's so little of it in a blend.
That's the problem.
I don't
Like,
feel like that's something that you can just pick out immediately.
So do you remember? And this is taking way too long. But do you remember when?
Nobody's watching anyway.
Well, they're trying to. You remember when the Neanderthal, like when Skip was blending that, and he had the Pennsylvania Sucker Double Harrow in it.
Vaguely.
Well, it's one of the leaves that's in it, and at the time it was described as being super strong, which it is, and it was a tobacco that not a lot of people were using. Since then, certainly a lot more have gotten access to the tobacco and have started using it. And I remember Skip gave me a cigar that was almost entirely of that tobacco, with a little bit of other things in it to help it burn. And so he was like, he just wanted to give it to me, I think, because he wanted to see me vomit in his factory. And so
Always a good time.
I smoked it, and I got through like 10 minutes of it, and before the nicotine started to kick in, and I was like, all right, like this is what it is. It had a ton of punch, but like that's the thing is unless you go through that experience, even tobacco like that's super strong, like way stronger, I would imagine, than any of the Medio Tiempo or Ligeros that Aganorsa is using in most of their stuff. Like until you do that, you can't. If you're a consumer, I find it very challenging for people to be able to taste particularly filler tobaccos. I can understand wrapper tobaccos, and certainly some other ones, but even someone like Pete, who was here earlier, who's really good about picking up unique individual tobaccos. I think that that comes from not only having a good palate and having a good memory, but also it comes from the ability that Pete has of going into factories and working with growers and to be able to taste individual leaves, because otherwise you're like, is it 5% Medio Tiempo? Is it 50% Medio Tiempo? To my knowledge, Aganorsa has not disclosed that with any of those blends. And if it's 5% Medio Tiempo, I'm going to bet that you probably can't tell the difference between if that's 5% Medio Tiempo or 5% Ligero, because the difference just isn't going to be that much.
All right, a couple more. Spencer.
But I have not smoked a Medio Tiempo Puro, so I don't know. Maybe it is that much.
If somebody's out there, we'd love one. Spencer says, so I don't mean to this as a jab to you guys and all the work you do, since you're so recognized. Do you think some of the vendors get disappointed when a blogger comes to their booth during the show?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Look, here's the thing. I had this conversation with Steve Saga the other day because he annoyingly asked people to try to make reservations with him as a way to help us. And I know that Steve Saka, if he watches this, I'll be part of Saka's question of the week. Steve did this to try to help all of the media as well as his retailers and to make the process more efficient. I understand it. I don't necessarily like the process, but I get it. And I don't disagree with him about why he's doing it. But from our perspective at Halfwheel, and I believe that most of the other online media bloggers are on board with this, and it's certainly the official policy of the IPCPR. If a retailer is meeting with a manufacturer, like even if I have a meeting, and this is what I told Steve Saka, like even if I'm scheduled to meet with you, like I will not interrupt that meeting. And like I got plenty of other things to do. There's a good chance that I'm busier than that retailer, but like you're there to do business, and I'm not going to go place an order in your booth. And I understand that, like like I think we're being honest here. Like if a retailer places a $600 order with a manufacturer, like they're probably going to get more value out of spending time with Halfwheel, but or most blogs for that matter. But that's not how we look at it. And certainly the direction from the IPCPR, the official rules would state that we're not here to interrupt business, and I don't think that's the case. So yeah, I think that there are some manufacturers that would much rather not see any bloggers because that could mean that they could just see retailers. I think that there are some manufacturers that look at media in general as a nuisance, so they don't necessarily want to see them. There are some people that don't I think don't have a clue about what cigar media looks like online. And then there are some people that probably don't really want to sit down with us because they're upset about a rating or something that we wrote, or they didn't get invited on Facebook Live. Who the hell knows at this point? But I think there's definitely times in which you're like, oh great, here comes the people with cameras.
Yeah, there's only been a couple of times that I can remember where we've had real hostility, and we won't point those out at the moment. But
next question.
Look, people. It's understandable that people get upset sometimes about something that they perceive or something that we write or whatever it is. I think that there was a time in the beginning when bloggers were not like they are now, when basically it was just a free-for-all and bloggers would just go around and just ask for free samples and that was the end of it. It's not like that anymore, at least not that I've seen. The people the media who are attending the show now are, they're professionals for the most part, and they're people who are there to cover the show specifically. If we show up and we say, hey, we want a little bit of your time, as long as you're not talking to a retailer, we would hope that they would give that to us. Now, as Charlie said, if there's a retailer there or, that they're selling, we just move on. There's plenty of people to...
Have we not?
No. We're done.
Oh.
There's plenty of people to talk to, and there's plenty of booths to cover, so it's not necessary to interrupt anybody at all. Okay, last question.
Oh, no, I didn't mean that as the last question for the day. I just meant that was the last question we'd printed out.
Mm-hmm. You might want to specify that.
All right, so we've taken all the questions from the comment section?
Everything that we know of.
But there's at least...
one more.
That one?
Mm-hmm. This one right here.
We didn't ask that one.
Well, okay.
Or that one.
No, we did ask that one. This one we haven't.
This one we've not asked.
That's correct.
Okay.
But that was not on the... So, really quick, why again is it, Tom says, why again is it you cannot smoke or won't smoke cigars during the show or in the office?
So our leasing terms, there's a therapist behind us who was having a very loud therapy conversation, and there's a loan, some sort of personal finance company over there. Let you know, I don't know. That would be probably a really good video thing for us to do, now that I think about it. We could be like every other person on YouTube. We'll let you know how that goes, and we have some plans for a big blowout party. Involves Jeroboams of beer.
We're gonna have Skip come in and design it.
I think Skip hired an architect.
Their place is awesome.
Skip hired someone to do that.
Really?
Yes.
Awesome. It's an awesome place.
I don't doubt that Skip couldn't do it, but I think Skip hired someone to do it because I think Skip's got better things to do.
What do you feel would be the most disappointing about IPCPR 2018 versus 2016 or 2017?
Well, versus 2016, it's pretty simple. If you were staying at the Westgate and you were staying at the Venetian in 2016, that's going to be pretty disappointing, even if you don't get sick. And I don't mean to joke about that. But the Westgate, I've stayed there before, not for IPCPR. I stayed there for TP a couple years ago. I wrote that, the new tower is not bad. My problem with the Westgate is that it feels like you're in Reno because they're downstairs hawking timeshares, and it just doesn't feel like you're in Vegas. And the SLS, which is also not really on the Strip, which is where we stay, at least when you're down there, like it feels like Vegas. It doesn't feel like you're in Reno or Oklahoma or wherever there's casinos that aren't the Venetian.
Oklahoma.
Yeah, have you been to some of those casinos?
I have. I saw a show there once.
It's not
Harry Connick Jr.
Great. Wonderful.
All right.
I'm so glad we did this. So as far as 2016, that would be my big disappointment comparison. 2017, so last year, I don't know. I feel like the IPCPR is done outside of the whole stomach flu thing, which isn't really their fault. I feel like they've done some things. I guess they don't have that band thing performing anymore. But I think that the things are probably going to be a little bit better this year for the people that attend. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what do you feel will be the most disappointing? I don't know. There's some companies that aren't here for this year, including some companies that have been around for a while. Like the understanding is they're replacing it with something, but I don't know what it looks like. If I had to take a guess, it's probably going to be the bar at the SLS. I mean, that's certainly the one that we'll be at since we're staying at the SLS. But and there were quite a few people there last year, but
really uncomfortable chairs.
I don't mind the chairs. Look, the one thing I think about that was nice about the SLS last year was there weren't that many people. The circle bar was great, but it also is like, when there's 350 people there, it's a pain.
For those of you who don't know, Circle Bar was where all the people used to hang out at the end of the day.
Well, there's two of them. So there was one at the Venetian that was actually called the Circle Bar, and then there was the one at the Palazzo, which was the Champagne Bar, which was not a circle.
It's the same thing, wasn't it?
No, because the Circle Bar at the Venetian...
Weren't they like mirror images of each
No,
other?
the Circle Bar at the Venetian
I never went to the other.
Was the big one on the center of the floor. It's an actual circle, and there's like slot machines all around it. The one at the Venetian, or the Palazzo, you had to walk up, it was an elevated platform, and then there was chairs, and there was a slight oval champagne bar, but there was no gaming. There was no slot machines there. Because you would at the Circle Bar at the Venetian, you would just go hang out. Basically, you would sit on slot machines because there were never enough chairs. I don't know. Either one of them weren't great solutions. My guess is probably the SLS.
Hopefully so we don't have to go very far.
No, hopefully not, so I can go to sleep a lot quicker.
Any clue on what the booth will look like this year for Drew Estate?
Nope. I assume it's the same
as
as last
same
year.
thing. I mean, they kept the other one for, 5 years, 6 years?
No, they did not. The one with the bridge?
Yeah.
No, the bridge. Well, the booth that they have is the modified version of the bridge booth.
Yeah.
Right? It's just the bridge booth without the bridge.
Without the bridge.
Yeah, no, I assume it's probably going to look roughly the same, but I don't know. No, the bridge was only kept for a couple of years. That was the whole thing. Yeah. The bridge was so expensive to transport because it was so heavy that they realized that it was cheaper for them to basically throw it away than it was and start over than keeping that thing. It was really cool, though.
Your thoughts on the Cigar Rights of America, CRA? Just in general? Or?
Yeah, we could be here for a while. Look, I think the Cigar Rights of America is a very important organization. I agree with Kent Pennington, who's a local retailer, who describes the CRA as, quote, the Disgruntled Manufacturers Association. I think the Cigar Rights of America, my biggest gripe has been with them is that they promote themselves as a consumer organization, and they really aren't a consumer organization. There's only one consumer on their board. And I guess the NRA, I'm not as familiar with the NRA as I am with the CRA, but from what I understand, the NRA is also somewhat similar in the sense that they have a lot of members, but it's really controlled by their executive board, and certainly the gun manufacturers have a lot of say over it. I can tell you the CRA, the manufacturers have basically the entire say over what goes on, and the manufacturers rightfully are the ones that fund the organization. But I do wish that we had my dream scenario, and the CRA is the less of the culprit here. The IPCPR is a bigger organization, or is a bigger problem of masking. It is one thing, and really operating is something else. And I've written about that before. My dream scenario is that we would have a retailers organization that was funded by the retailers, controlled by the retailers, which we do not have right now. We have a retailers organization that's largely funded by manufacturers, controlled by retailers. Then we would have a manufacturers organization funded by manufacturers and controlled by manufacturers. And then we would have a consumer organization who would be, operated by consumers and funded, by consumers, and basically would just be like a voter outreach machine, essentially. It wouldn't necessarily be about trying to raise money. It would just be you're going to go out and, support cigars and elections and write letters to your congressman, things like that. That's the dream scenario. At the moment, what we have is we have the CAA, which is a manufacturers organization funded by manufacturers, claims to be manufacturers, operating as a manufacturers association. Certainly a bit more big tobacco focused, or not big tobacco, but not necessarily a premium cigar organization. Little cigars are more represented. So you have Swisher and Altria, and Altadas is another big component of the CAA. You have the CRA, which is, perhaps it's changed a little bit, but was always marketed as being the NRA of the cigar industry, was being a consumer organization, and is not so much a consumer organization. And then you have the IPCPR, which is a retailers organization, which is controlled by retailers, but funded almost exclusively by manufacturers. And and then we have the CMA, I guess. I don't know if it's still around. Cigar Media Association.
Not as impressive.
We declined to join. We should be very clear about that. But no, my thoughts would be you have three separate organizations. As far as what the CRA has been able to do, there are a lot of manufacturers that are spending a lot of money, particularly with the CRA and through the CRA, to fight these regulations. And there are a lot of them that are doing it, and some of them are doing it kind of quietly. And I certainly commend them and the efforts that Glenn and Robbie have led at the CRA in terms of trying to get that money to fund these lawsuits. The amount of money that it's going to cost to fund the lawsuits fully through the appeals court is a ton of money, more money than I think anyone really would even want to think about. And the manufacturers are certainly the ones that are funding the vast majority of the bill.
All right, two more questions. What do you guys think about more European brands trying to enter the U.S. market?
Capitalism's great. Bring it on.
Good luck. Would I say that?
Brooks says, "Go back to Europe. Build that wall."
That's not what I said. Being a pacifist, I can't actually say something like that.
Why does a pacifist prevent you from building a wall?
People get hurt climbing walls, man.
People get... fuck it. Keep going.
One more. That animals, they could get hurt. You want me to answer this?
Go for it.
All right.
What is what you're pointing at?
What is the worst rumor that you've heard about this year's show?
We're going to do like a whole show. It would certainly be very interesting if Padron was doing that. I can't see it as to why you would ask, like, okay, if Padron's not really doing it, why would they not deny it? I would say that part of it might be that they just don't want to really dignify anything that's not true with a response. And they also, they're pretty secretive about things that they're doing. I mean, there's been times in which we've been like, hey, what about this? And they're like, that doesn't exist. And we're like, well, except for the one that I'm holding, apparently. And they're like, oh, yeah, we shipped that 3 weeks ago. You're like, all right.
Yeah, they don't give out a lot of information typically. So,
but I think it's a legitimate question because we asked Padron, and Padron said, a representative from Padron said, we've heard that, but we don't have anything to say about it. And obviously, like, that would normally be normally if it wasn't true, you would deny it. But Padron's one of those companies that it wouldn't surprise me if they just say, like, we're not going to dignify anything with a response. So, that would be on there. The rumor, if you want to go look for it, it was on Reddit on our cigar. So I'm sure if you type in Reddit Padron Villiger, you can probably stumble across a couple threads.
It would be a very interesting cigar.
I mean, to answer the question about what draws people to booths or a big booth or a small booth, if you have Padron making you a cigar, that will draw people to your booth.
Indeed.
So, yeah.
All right, bonus question. What do you guys think about more U.S. brands trying to enter the European market?
Build that... sorry?
What? No.
I believe that Europe is the savior to the FDA problem in America. If you think FDA is a big issue, go to Europe, see... I mean, Europe has a trade show. It's called Intertobacco. It's bigger than the IPCPR one because it's not just cigars, it's all tobacco products. But and it is a buying trade show. I was watching Cigar Coop's broadcast the other day, and Ben Lee from Stogie Review, who I like a lot, except for his old Mississippi State cowbell nonsense. Ben Lee mentioned that like it's not a buying event. It is a buying event. There are retailers at Intertabac. And so buying does go on in Intertabac, but the whole concept of discounts are illegal in the entire country of Germany. Germany's not alone in that regard. So if you think the FDA's got some screwed up rules, it makes Europe makes the FDA look quite easy to deal with. And the problem in Europe is they're only going to get worse, and they're very complex because of the nature of the European Union and countries having their own rules and different taxes, different languages, different distributors. So if you go to Europe and you can make it work, bless your heart. If you can't make it work, bless your heart as well. But make no mistake about it, America's the biggest market in the world for cigars, and for the vast majority of cigar companies operating in the global market, America is far and away the most important market. And
that doesn't even take into account the idea that most of the other pretty much the entire world, other than the U.S., smokes Cubans, and you're going to have a lot of trouble.
But that's that's false. Like yes, there are
know about that.
There are Cuban cigars smoked in every country in the world,
Certainly.
including here. And there are some people that believe the American market is the largest market for Cuban cigars in the world, even after all the embargoes. And it may very well be the case. I mean, you talk to for example,
I'm sorry. What was it that you're disagreeing with about my statement here?
That in other countries that they only smoke Cuban cigars.
No, my point was that you're going to have a lot of pushback on people who smoke Cuban cigars who don't necessarily want to smoke a
absolutely
Roma Craft that could knock their socks off.
Yes, but by the same token,
that was my point. Was you're not going to have people who are just going to start smoking. Yeah,
but that's not the case in America. You go into a shop and you try to get someone that's smoking Padron 1964 to smoke a Davidoff. He's not going to do it. You try to get someone that's smoking a bundle cigar to smoke a Roma Craft. They're not going to do it. I mean,
certainly.
I think that's a big misnomer. There certainly is a different attitude in the market because you're dealing with the big behemoth that is Habanos, and that's a very different mentality because it's like, it's not so much like, oh, Padron's my competitor or La Flor's my competitor. It's like Habanos is my competitor. Everyone's fighting against Habanos, fight the man. That mentality is different. But, Germany is got to be very close, if not has already exceeded it, where there's probably more non-Cuban cigars being sold. Certainly in the Netherlands there's more non-Cuban cigars being sold, and it's the number body. And yet Mitchell, who sells more cigars in the UK than anyone else, seems to think that that's not going to be that is breaking, and that's startling because I would not have predicted that.
Well, I can assure you that Mitchell knows more about it than I do.
He knows more about it than both of us do. He knows more about selling cigars in the UK than anyone else, I think.
I would be fascinated to see if that was the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm certainly with you. When Mitchell told me that a couple weeks ago, I was very surprised. But Mitchell has all of the data.
Well, let's come back in 2 years and we'll see if it's true.
But anyway, I to my larger point, I do think that it is the case. I think people oftentimes get caught up on that's the biggest problem is, oh, there's only people that are only going to smoke Cuban cigars. That is certainly the case. There are those people. There are those people in every part of the world, including here in the United States of America. And there's a whole bunch of people in the U.S. that are also those same mindsets. It certainly helps in the case of the Netherlands that you had a much younger population that was interested in learning about cigars, and you had a distributor that was very aggressive, and you had a group of people that were okay with smoking big ring gauge cigars or flavored cigars or cigars that had a lot of strength. That's helpful. There's no doubt about it. But I don't think that that's really the big issue that people should focus on. I think the big issue is Europe is spread out. The margins are worse. The language barriers, everything else that goes into it. And so, I think if you're worried about Habanos, then that's just probably, unless you're going to try to go into a market and be the 40% of the market, then you probably don't need to be worrying about Habanos. All right. Are we done, or you have more bonus questions? Thank the Lord. All right, so this has been less than fun, this particular one, because of all the technical issues. Did we use these other cameras?
Did not, no.
Great. That was, we broke a cable for nothing, apparently. Anyway, so thank you all for tuning into this. I know this one's been a particularly trying time, and I don't even want to know what time it is. But we will have another one of these from Vegas on Friday, beginning at 1:30 Central Time, so that would be 2:30 Eastern Time or 11:30 local time in Vegas. We have 8 guests, and I promised for a very long time that I'm going to send out the guest list. And do you even?
I don't know anything about it. No.
Yeah. So I will say this: I'm really happy about the
Yeah.
guest list that we put together.
Is it on Basecamp?
It is on Basecamp.
Oh.
All right, so this will be the guest list for Friday. That's a different schedule.
Breaking news.
Robert Holt, but unless he's given away himself, but that would be very odd. So and
But
then
it's America, so you can do whatever you want.
and then once we have a winner, Brooks will go on there and comment and be like, "Hey, Southern Draw contest is over." You can't. I don't think he can give away a person, but he'll be like, "Hey,
Yourself?
Southern Draw." I still don't. That's not illegal. Southern Draw contest
You've
is
been in
over.
Alabama lately.
Can I? Jesus.
Sorry.
So Brooks will go on after we have a winner. He'll be like, "Southern Draw contest is over," and then once our next guest is on, he will then announce the next guest and let you know about that comment. So it's important to know because if you have comments specifically for these people, you can ask them at any time. But if you want them to be as part of the contest, you need to wait until you see it in the Facebook comment section. Once again, comments will only be on Facebook. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. So here's the schedule. And once again, we'll post this elsewhere. So at 11:40, Robert Holt from Southern Draw will be our first guest. We start at 11:30, so it'll be like 10 minutes of housekeeping and trying to figure out
Making sure it works.
why the audio doesn't work. At 12 o'clock, so these are all these times are in Pacific time, just so that we're clear. These are all local time. So at 11:40, which would be 2:40 Eastern, Robert Holt's the first guest. At 12 o'clock Pacific or 3 o'clock Eastern, the Casadas will be on. We have Esther, Patricia, and Raquel Casada are going to be joining us. And I hope that they're comfortable sitting next to each other at a very small table. At 12:20 local time or 3:20 Eastern time, is Juan Ignacio Martinez from Hueda, Nicaragua. At 12:40, which would also be 3:40 Eastern time, Scott Pierce, the executive director at IPCPR, will be joining us. 1 o'clock local time, make a USB stick. At 2 o'clock local time, 5 o'clock Eastern, Pete Johnson from Taiwahe will be on. We're going to talk about Cristiano Ronaldo and maybe some other things. And at 2:20 local, 5:20 Eastern, Michael Salucci from Quality Importers and Zycar will be our final guest. And we're going to have a good time with Salucci. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but that's the guest lineup. There might be some other people that stop by from here from time to time. I don't really know how it's going to work. Hopefully we get through it all, but we're really looking forward to doing it. I'll be hosting it. You'll see Brian and Patrick on from time to time as well. I don't think Brooks is going to be on for the Friday show. We might see him later on in the week on one of our morning shows, but we'll be live from Las Vegas, live from the IPCPR trade show floor, and lots of giveaways. If you have questions for any of those guests, you can leave them on Facebook or on YouTube or on the post on the website, and we will ask them for them. So even if you're not going to be around, like if you really want to ask Pete a question, but you know that you're not going to be available at 5 o'clock Eastern time, then you can submit your question and we will add it to the pool of questions that we'll ask Pete. We'll take some questions from you guys. I'll ask some questions. And yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. We've been planning this for many months now, so hopefully the audio works on Facebook. So we're going to wrap up here. These 3 cameras.
I'm happy to help out any way I can.
Don't say that because I got some bad ideas for Las Vegas tasks for you. Anyway, but I do think Brooks for being here. It would have been a bit more challenging and awkward for me to just stare into all these Sony cameras if he was not here. So we thank you for tuning in. We thank you for dealing with our technical issues today. Patrick is behind the scenes and dealing with not only this.
And thank you for that, Patrick.
But also writing a whole bunch of stories about Lotus and other companies. If you have more questions about IPCPR, once again, we have that show on Friday coming up. We'll have shows Saturday, Sunday, Monday in the mornings or like early afternoon if you're on the East Coast. And then after the trade show closes, we'll be doing them. I believe we're going to do them on Instagram Live as well as on Facebook and YouTube. So we'll be dealing with those.
What could go wrong?
Well, at least on Instagram, we only got to worry about one device. So anyway, so we'll be broadcasting those out throughout the trade show. And then obviously, I don't know if you've heard, Brooks, but we're going to have some trade show coverage this year.
You know, I assumed we'd have some. Was it 20, maybe 30 booths we're going to cover?
24 is the goal.
Let's go back to 2000.
Let's not go back to the 20th century. All right. So with that said, I think we're done. I've never been more excited to pack up cameras and get them out of our studio or out of our humidor room. I hope you enjoyed this. I know a lot of you have asked if we will continue doing this on a more regular basis. The answer is probably not, but we're going to try to continue to find ways to do video and, you know, hopefully. But the problem is that there's really just right now there's a lot